I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
And been sober since July 4th, 1989. Basically through AA. Didn't go to treatment. Didn't have an intervention. Didn't go to detox. Figured out, oh, I'm an alcoholic. What do I do? Well, I went and got sober. Gee. And I was at Hazelden 20 years, from 1994 to 2014 as Director of Spiritual Guidance. And then in 2014 made a shift and went to the retreat in Wayzata, Minnesota. The retreat is not treatment. It is it's licensed as a hotel license. It's a spiritual retreat, and the spirituality is that of AA. It's simply a 30-day AA immersion. So it's a place to stay for a month and be immersed in the AA program. As a result, we don't have a lot of things that make treatment expensive. So right now, the price going to Hazelden is $36,500 for a month. But by the time you add mental health and pharmacy, it's about $40,000. The retreat is $4,900. And last year, we had a grant from Bremer Banks. We're hoping to renew it this year, which lowered the price for outstate Minnesota, and Rochester is outstate, to $2,500. If we get the grant again, people from Rochester area will be able to go to the retreat for a month for $2,500. Our fingers crossed we'll get that grant again, which is like really cheap. Because we don't have doctors and nurses. You get sick, you go to urgent care around the corner. You need pharmacy, you go to Lund's Pharmacy next door. So, but what we have is 300 AA volunteers, as well as our 5 professional staff. And so we bring like about 1 million years of AA experience. We have 2 books, the AA Big Book and 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. And you learn the AA Big Book line by line from people who are already practicing. So we take people who need recovery, put them with people who have recovery, and spend a month learning it. We're also notable for what we don't have: television, radio, internet, movies, cell phones, and people of the opposite sex. There's no dating. There's no opportunities for dating. There's separate wings for men and women, separate dining rooms. So, no dating potential. So there's really nothing to do but learn AA. That's it. Got a big book, 12 and 12, and other alcoholics to talk to for a month. So you might as well learn the program because there's nothing else to do. It's a lovely building. It was originally a family mansion, then it was a Catholic convent, and now it's the retreats. So you know somebody who needs to get sober, it's a great place to go. So I'm an alcoholic. My first drink was at age 8. I was in the pantry pouring myself a glass of Old Granddad, and my dad came in the pantry. One of the very few affirmations I got was, "Well, aren't you the little man?" I thought, "Yes, I am." So don't drink the Old Granddad. That's for me. You can have Jack Daniels. That's for guests. No, I'll compromise. I'm reasonable. But it was a very violent family. And my 2 sisters and I were all battered children. I got it the worst. Trying to understand it later, I thought, let's see, Mom hated her father, who was named John, hated her brother, who was named John, hated her husband, who was named John, had 1 son, named him John. Not a good trend. So by the time I was in 5th grade, I was crying and shaking and throwing up. Nurse sent me to the doctor. Doctor gave me Librium for anxiety, and Percodan for pain, and Fiorinol, barbiturate, for migraines. And I stopped crying, so they figured that was success. And July 4th, 1954, somehow, I can't remember, but I got a major brain injury. Somebody hit me in the head with a pipe, probably my mom. Split the skull open, jagged pieces cut into the brain. And so I have scarring in the brain. And one of the upshot, in addition to spending the summer in the hospital, I also can't remember that, is I've had a migraine headache every single day since July 4th, 1954. It's very annoying. I have small seizures, see colors when they're not there. And so that's why I got all the pain pills to treat the pain. Of course, opiates don't work on neurological pain, but that fact managed to evade the doctors, so I got loaded up with opiates. And in the summer between 5th and 6th grade, and the summer between 6th and 7th grade, we went over to a crazy uncle's house, And he and his teenage son every Sunday would take me down the basement, beat me up with wooden boards, and take turns raping me. That made me even more nervous and upset. And the second summer, they graduated to torturing me until my brain went splat, and I couldn't even talk. So I got admitted to the state mental hospital because I was obviously crazy. Nothing wrong with them. It's all wrong with me. And so after a week of Thorazine, Compazine, and Stelazine, 3 antipsychotics that are all addictive, on top of the Percodan and Fiorinol and Valium and Librium and Jack Daniels, I could talk again. So I was discharged. It was considered a success. So every time I had a problem, I took pills and booze to solve, thought they were the solution. And perhaps they were. Because I think, when you're operated on, they give you really good drugs so you don't die of shock on the table. And I think all those drugs allowed me to take all the abuse and not die. So maybe drugs worked. I can't really be against them. But long after I wasn't being abused, I just kept using them. And at age 19, flunked out of college on a very cold January day, kicked out of the dorm, nowhere to go, had 69 cents in total assets in my pocket, and I can't stop peeing my pants, and the frozen pee is sticking to my leg. And I thought, I seem to have a problem. What kind of problem is this? I can't focus. I think I drink too much. Solution, drink less. And so I drank less. Every time I drank too much, I cut back. More, less, more, less. Never thought about it, didn't know what alcoholism was. And I functioned adequately, sort of, till age 40. At age 40, somehow I'd become a Methodist minister. God has a weird sense of humor. And I thought, my wife wanted a sabbatical year, so I thought, I'll go to Hazleton. I'll go pro. I'm good with working with alcoholics. Of course I am. I've been working with alcoholics since I was 10 minutes old. Nurse says, here's your mom, kid. Good luck. So I got to Hazleton. I met all these guys who, when they're 40, they were okay. And at 45, their life is a smoking ruin. And I looked at them. I thought, how lucky do I feel? I got out the textbook. There's 7 criteria for alcoholism. 3 or more, you're alcoholic. I scored a perfect 7. I thought, uh-oh. So I gently tapered off. I was taking a lot of drugs. You couldn't just quit. At 40, it's dangerous to just quit. So I did a straight line taper for 6 weeks, gently tapered off. My last dose was 1 milligram of Valium and 7.5 milliliters of Jack Daniels. That's a quarter of a shot of Jack Daniels and 1 milligram of Valium. And then the next day was 0. And that day was July 4th, 1989. I went to an AA meeting. I asked this guy, Phil, to sponsor me. He said, I got 2 questions. I said, go. He said, do you have the desire to stop drinking? I said, yes. He said, are you willing to do what you're told? I said, yes. He gave me a big book. I already had a big book. He said, this is a big book. He opened it. He said, it's in black and white. Read the black part. Okay. He opened it, chapter 5. So this is chapter 5, how it works. Chapter 6 is into action. The 12 steps are contained in these 2 chapters. If you read these 2 chapters and you do what they say, you will never drink or use again. If you do what they say. I read them and I did them, never drank or used again. That's after 30 years of every single hour, either alcohol or drugs or both. Not one sober hour in 30 years in a row from age 10 to age 40, never drank or used again. Now, it was extremely hard because as soon as I got sober, craving set in. Physical, gotta have it right now craving. It's like, He said, well, take it one day at a time. I said, that won't work. I haven't got a sober day in me. I said, take a half a day at a time. So I was not going to drink till noon. Not going to drink till noon. Go to a noontime meeting. Not going to drink till 6. Go to dinner with guys at 6. Not going to drink till 8. Go to 8 o'clock meeting. Not going to drink till I fall asleep. And I didn't fall asleep. If you can't sleep, don't sleep. Can't sleep, don't sleep. Eventually you'll sleep. Eventually I slept. Not going to drink till noon. Not going to drink till noon. Not going to drink till 6. Not going to drink till 8. Not going to drink till sleep. Can't sleep, don't sleep. Can't sleep, don't sleep. Eventually you sleep. Not going to drink till noon. Did that for 9 months. They said, keep coming back. It gets better. I said, when? 9 months into it, one day I was thinking, wait a minute. There's no law that says you have to drink. The thought police will not come and take me away if I don't drink. I don't have to drink. What was I thinking? I could have had a V8. What? And then it got better. I don't know why. Maybe it was just time. Now, there's something that's useful to know about addiction, and a lot of people don't know it simply because no one knew it till 2011. 1956, the American Medical Association said alcoholism was a disease. But a lot of doctors didn't believe it, and they didn't believe it because there's a definition of disease. And there's some people out there looking, they don't have seats. There's some seats up here. Yeah, lure them in. And there's a definition of disease. For something to be a disease, you need three things: an organ of the body, a defect in that organ, and then symptoms result. And because they couldn't find the organ, they didn't believe it's a disease. But now we know what the organ is. The organ is the brain. And the defect is a wiring defect in the midbrain. And there's a wonderful video that you can get from Amazon for about $38. The title is Pleasure Unwoven. Anybody here seen it?
Yeah.
Hey, some people have seen it. It's a great video. And it's 70 minutes long. It's a Utah neurologist who takes his four-wheeler and drives around the Canyonlands of Utah to describe the landscape of the brain. And it's 70 minutes long. I don't have an extra 70 minutes, so I'll give you my short summary. 3 levels to the brain: top, middle, and stem. The brain stem is in the back. It runs breathing and heartbeat for 60 to 100 years. Set and forget. When it stops running, so do you. You die. That's it for the stem. Top left roughly thinks. Top right roughly feels. The midbrain has no thoughts and no feelings. It does survival and the next 15 seconds. It's really good at surviving. And it can cancel all your thoughts and all your feelings and make you do something you're not aware of. Best example of midbrain override comes when you burn your hand. When you burn your hand, you don't stand there with your hand quietly burning, thinking about your choices. No, what happens is, ha! That hand is gone off the hot surface. Before you can think, I'm burnt. And before you even feel the pain, the hand is whipped out of there by your midbrain, which is important because burning is very bad for survival. Another example, sleep apnea. You stop breathing in your sleep. Midbrain wakes you up, sits you up, makes you gasp for air. Again, that's fabulous. Not breathing is very bad for survival. So your midbrain is there to take care of you. And it's there from the very first moment of your life. When you're born, doctor picks you up by the ankles, cleans your throat out so you breathe. That's good. Your lungs are working. Second thing the doctor does, places you in the forearm, head up here, feet down there, and then the doctor goes, whoop, simulates a fall. At that point, your arms and legs go, wah, go flying out to brace against that fall. You're born, your midbrain knows falling is bad, especially when you hit the bottom. So if your arms and legs don't fly out, they race you off to neonatal intensive care unit to help your midbrain finish developing. But it's there right from the beginning, pre-wired to know what's dangerous and what's really great. So here's the difference between me and a normal person. Normal person encounters wine, perhaps for the first time in a restaurant with their parents. Normal midbrain kicks out a normal dose of a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which is how we perceive pleasure. Normal dose hits the normal brain normally, and the part that thinks, I like wine. The part that feels a little warmth, a little pleasure, and the rest of the brain responds with a normal dose of another neurotransmitter called glutamate, which is how we remember things. It says, make a note of this, you like wine. Perhaps when you see it again, you'll have another glass because you like it. That is not me. Why? All my ancestors, except my dad's mother, one person, every one of them but one, was an alcoholic. So I inherited a wiring defect from my ancestors. I'm alcoholic the same way that I'm white. I'm white because my ancestors were white. I'm alcoholic because my ancestors were alcoholic. It's very simple. I inherited the wiring defect. This is the defect. When I encounter alcohol, my midbrain kicks out way too much dopamine, which hits the rest of the brain hard. The part that thinks, this is the answer to all of life's persistent mysteries. The part that feels fabulous. The rest of the brain responds with a big dump of glutamate that says, remember this is important. Woo! The midbrain has no memory. It can't remember. It's not something it does. but it's getting a big dump of a neurotransmitter that says remember, and it can't. So it does what it can do. It shuffles the deck and relabels alcohol as number one for survival, more important than food, water, sex, which preserves the human race for the next generation, and fight when threatened. So I drink alcohol instead of water, instead of food, instead of making love, and instead of fighting for the elements of my survival. My bank account, my driver's license, my job, my personal freedom to stay out of jail. Alcohol becomes number one. So how does this work out in real life? Non-alcoholic has too many drinks at a wedding reception, gets arrested for drunk driving. They are so humiliated by being handcuffed, stuffed in a cruiser, photographed with that stupid number plate under their face, hauled in front of a judge, sent to drunk driver charm school, insurance surcharge, lawyer bill. They will never drink and drive again. No way. The alcoholic has the exact same experience, and they think, I'll be more careful when I drink and drive. Because the midbrain has labeled alcohol as more important than all that inconvenience. That's where you get a second, third, fourth, fifth, ninth DWI. Because the brain says, I'm not giving up alcohol. And if someone suggests you stop drinking, you react like your air supply is being cut off. Not that! I'll take up jogging. I'll quit cigarettes. I'm not giving up alcohol. No way. And this is what happens to us. And this is why, to the observer, non-alcoholic observer, we make no sense. Okay. So that's what's wrong. And because the midbrain has no memory, it can't learn. So every night when I go to sleep, my brain resets itself to alcoholic. So every morning when I wake up, I have to reset it the other way to recovering guy. So on the one hand, I have 26 years of sobriety. That's nice. I got a 26-year medallion. It's all shiny. But that doesn't make me sober tomorrow. Tomorrow's sobriety depends upon what I do tomorrow morning. So I wake up naturally alcoholic. I was at Hazelden 20 years. The best comment ever made by a patient in 20 years was this. One day we admitted a very tired, worn-out, middle-aged woman who was just kind of defeated by her disease. And there was a brand new graduate student who's doing the initial assessment, frequency of drinking, types, amounts, consequences, this big, long form. She's taking down all this data. And she looks at the woman and goes, why do you drink so much? And the woman said, because I'm an alcoholic, honey. That's what we do. It's the most perfect answer. It doesn't need a reason. This is who we are. This is what we do. It's natural. So for me, drinking is forever natural. Sobriety is forever unnatural. That's why I need a program to be sober. I don't need a program to drink. I don't need a big book of cocktails. I don't need a drinking sponsor. I don't need a medallion I don't need a list of bars. I drink just fine. I need a program to stay sober because sobriety is forever unnatural. I have a drinking midbrain. I don't need any extra help to drink. I'm all equipped. I need a program to stay sober because sobriety is forever not natural. It takes a plan. Now, this isn't strange. If you're diabetic, the natural thing to do is get sleepy, go into a coma, and die. If you want something better than that, you need a program. It's got 3 steps. Step 1, measure your blood sugar. Step 2, follow your diet. Step 3, take your medication. All you have to do to be sick again is nothing. Sick is natural. I got a 12-step program. All I have to do to be sick again is nothing, just like the diabetic. Disease is normal. Sobriety is not normal. So, what am I going to do? I believe if we're spiritually fit, we will not relapse. That's what the big book says. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Let me tell you just how rare it is for thoroughly following our path. The very most successful group of alcoholics in this country is commercial airline pilots who've been intervened on. They have a program. You know, you see these stories about secret government programs. There actually is a semi-secret kind of government program called HIMSS. It stands for the Human Intervention and Motivation Study. And its partners include the federal government, the Federal Aviation Administration, the airlines, the union, the Airline Pilots Association, and certain treatment centers. And it's a tight noose. Once a pilot's been identified as having a problem, it's voluntary, but if you don't volunteer, you'll never fly again. And flying is fun. And if you're a major airline, it's well compensated. The commuter airlines aren't well compensated, but they're hoping to reach the big leagues where they will be well paid. But flying is fun. And they have to go for 90 days of residential treatment, and it has to be 12-step based treatment. The federal government manual, the FAA manual, and there's this rumor out there that there's some rule that says the government can't refer you to AA. Yes, they can, because the federal government manual says alcoholic pilots are not only physically ill, they are not only mentally ill, but their souls are sick. And therefore their treatment must be spiritual in nature, and they have to go to AA. Federal government manual. Their souls are sick. And the union picks your AA sponsor. And you will attend meetings with your sponsor that the union picked for you, and he reports every Friday on your attendance and your attitude. Your attitude is pre-selected for you. This is it. You are grateful for everything. And you resent nothing. You bitch about your wife, you're grounded. You bitch about the company, you're grounded. You bitch about the weather, you're grounded. You bitch about your assignments, you're grounded. And most of all, if you bitch about the HIMSS program, you will never get off the ground. So immediately you run off to your union rep and go, what are they're railroading me? And the union business rep smiles at you and says, this is a benefit we negotiated for you in the contract. Be grateful. And you begin to suspect that there's no way out of this. 5 years after being identified, 95% of the pilots are clean, sober, flying, and grateful. And 95% of the pilots finish their entire career and retire without picking up another drink. If I could have 95% success with AIDS, I'd get the Nobel Prize for Medicine. If I get 95% success for cancer, I'd be a national hero. 95% success with alcoholism and drug addiction. How do I know it works? That's how I know it works. Second most successful group, Washington State physicians, because they copied the pilots program. Washington State physicians have, the Physicians Association picks your sponsor, and they report monthly. I've led the Washington State Physicians Spiritual Retreat twice. It's beautiful in the spring in the Cascade Mountains. It's just lovely, and it's free. But your spouse has to attend with you and report on the state of your marriage. If they don't attend or they don't give a positive report, your license is suspended. So, be grateful. Treat your spouse well, or you're not practicing medicine in Washington State. Your marriage should reflect the quality of your recovery. And if you're single and you have a girlfriend, she's got to attend. Or a boyfriend, he's got to attend. Or a gay partner, they've got to attend. Your relationships should reflect the quality of your recovery. If you have no one, you're not in a relationship with anyone, they want to know why. What is it about you? It makes you ineligible for a relationship. You can bring your mother, but you better be getting along well with her. Your recovery should be reflected in your relationships. 85% recovery at 5 years out. This can work. If we turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understand God, we're granted a daily reprieve from relapse. Why? Because at night our brain resets. So what does the big book have for me? I go, I can't do that. I can't do that. Of course I can't do that. Big book says, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. Of course half measures avail us nothing. That's true in every aspect of medicine. Half measures avail us nothing throughout medicine. A couple years ago, I was speaking to a group of Mexican and Cuban drug counselors in Mexico City. I was being translated into Spanish. And I made a mistake. I ate a salad. Oops. And I got Mexican salad disease. Oh. 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 And I came home. My son-in-law was visiting over Labor Day weekend. It's hard to get a doctor, but he is a famous heart transplant doctor. He's a wonderful cardiologist and a crappy tropical medicine doctor. And he gave me a prescription for 3 days worth of Cipro. Well, I've traveled all over the world. I've had tropical diseases before, and I know the right answer is 5 days of Cipro. 3 days is a half measure. And he said, I'm the doctor. And I said, but you're a cardiologist. He wouldn't change his mind. So I took 3 days worth of Cipro and it went away. And he went home to Chicago and it came back. Worse than ever before. So I went to Regis Hospital, St. Paul. I got a tropical medicine doctor and he gave me a prescription for 5 days of Cipro. I said, my son-in-law gave me 3 days worth. He said, he was wrong. I said, I tried to tell him that, but he's a famous cardiologist. He said, oh yeah, and he wouldn't listen. 5 days of Cipro is a full measure. Half measures availed me nothing. That's how it is with biological diseases. Half a dose of chemo, the cancer comes back.
Right.
Half measures avail us nothing. Why? Because it always avails you nothing. You know? You go to get married, and the minister says, will you promise to love, honor, and cherish till death do us part? And you say, I'll do it halfway. You're not married. You know? Half measures always avail us nothing. It's not a big surprise. We stood at the turning point. We sought God's protection and care with complete abandon. That means go for it. If you have reservations, it's probably not going to work. Go for it. We recognize who's God and who isn't. There's God and me. Which one is which? Close your eyes. Guess. Okay. No, I'm not God. There was a guy named Mike Schicks who was executive vice president of Hazelden for many years. He's big and he's loud. He's now president of Project Turnabout in Granite Falls. And he's a big guy. And he'd get up at the podium in Hazelden and have 172 people in the lecture hall. And he'd go, I'm going to tell you something about God, and you're all going to agree with me. And they go, no, we're not. And they go, it's not me. And they go, well, yeah. I don't have to know who God is, but I have to know who God isn't. That's me. And that might seem obvious, but if I'm making all my own decisions, I'm acting like God. And I'm not qualified. See, my life is unmanageable only when I'm trying to manage it. My life isn't meant to be managed, it's meant to be lived. How's that work out? I take the first 3 steps every morning of AA, in a minute, in 1 minute. I'm not a morning person. Step 1. Good morning, John. You're an alcoholic. Pay attention. Oh, right. It didn't go away overnight. Step 2. There's a God. It isn't me. Cleared that up. And step 3. I need a fresh decision today to turn my will and my life over the care of God. Yesterday's decision expired in my sleep. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to turn my will and my life over today? It's a nice idea, but how do I do it? And I think of my life's unfolding in a series of scenes of various lengths. Okay, got up at 7 o'clock this morning. Okay, 5 minutes in the bathroom, 10 minutes getting dressed, 5 minutes stop at Starbucks, 30-minute drive to Wayzata, different appointments during the day, back in the car, drive here, talking to you. Hey, it's just like a movie or TV script. Scene 1, the office. Scene 2, the corridor. Scene 3, the bathroom. In each scene, I ask myself exactly the same question, which is this: what does God want me to do about what's right in front of me right now? Answer the question. Do that. See, a lot of people spend a lot of time in AA going, who is God? What is God's will? Why does God allow evil? I don't know. I don't know. I am not going to figure out God. Instead, I just try to figure out, what does God want from me right now? Well, talk to you about recovery. That seems clear. If I spent this hour up here going, I don't know, I can't talk to you until I figure out God, it'd be a very dull evening. Is God bigger than Red Box? I don't know. I'm reduced to nothing. What does God want from me right now? No matter how short the scene. 5 minutes in a public bathroom. What's God's will all alone in a public bathroom? Well, don't pee on the floor. When I was drunk, I'd pee on the floor. What do I care? It's not my floor. I'm not cleaning it. Now, don't pee on the floor. Maybe even wipe the sink with a paper towel. That would be nice. If they're out of toilet paper, tell somebody so I don't pass on that little problem. Simple, no matter how short the scene. The question is, what does God want me to do about what's right in front of me right now? Answer the question. Do that. It's never going to be a jerk. It's never going to be indulge your character defects in all their glory. It's going to be pretty close to do the right thing right now. And if you do that one scene at a time, at the end of the day, you have turned your will and your life over. And it wasn't complicated. We accept ourselves as children of God, worthy of dignity and respect and recovery. We have value because our Creator says so. If you have self-esteem problems, it's because you don't know who you are. We are all children of God. This is a very important idea. The second word in Alcoholics Anonymous is anonymous. It doesn't mean secret. If you're in AA, your friends are going to know you really, really well. We don't come with bags over our heads. We are known. Anonymous doesn't mean secret. Anonymous means equality and fellowship. It means we are all exactly the same in our value. Why? Because our Creator said so. The word Creator, big C, is in the big book a lot. The U.S. Declaration of Independence introduces a new idea in human history. It's actually 2/3 full of resentments against the King of England, not all of them entirely true. But once you push past the resentments, there's a new idea. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that is obvious by looking at them, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator. Endowment is like an inheritance. We inherit from our Creator certain inalienable rights. Inalienable means that no one can take them away. And included in these rights are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. They don't guarantee you'll catch it, but you're welcome to chase it. And when governments are destructive of these rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish the government, a right of revolution. Now, I know they meant men, and they really meant white men, and only white men that own land, but they got the ball rolling. And in our time, it's come to mean everyone. It's a whole new, before then, rights belonged to the king. And he subdivided them to lords, and they subdivided them to landholders. And if you didn't own land, there's nothing left for you. But in our time, rights go from God directly to us, because God created us. This idea that we're children of God is incredibly powerful. 1985, my wife and I visited South Africa with a church group, and we had the opportunity to meet Bishop Desmond Tutu, who's a very spiritual man. And then later he came to this country and did a retreat for a week at Kirkridge, Pennsylvania. We spent time with him. And he really, really believes in God a lot, which helps. And years later, there was a great deal of conflict in South Africa between blacks who were fighting for freedom and blacks who were fighting against freedom. And they were rioting in this ugly Southwest township, and it has no electric lights there. The only electricity in this all-black township was in the government-owned gin halls. So at night, you could either sweat it out in your miserable shack, or you could go to the government-owned gin halls with this music and lights and dancing and gin. And then the government sold you the gin and got back your miserable wages when you bought the gin. And it also distracted you from political organization. So the rest of the township was dark and hot. And it was rioting between these thousands of blacks who were trying to kill each other by filling tires with gasoline, lighting them on fire, and throwing them around the other guy's neck, called necklacing, burning each other to death. And Bishop Tutu's coming home in his car. He had to live in that crappy township too, because all the blacks had to live there. And he's coming home and he's caught up in this riot with thousands of black men trying to kill each other in the dark with these gasoline-filled tires. Caught up in the riot. And he's a little guy with a high-pitched voice, but everybody recognizes him. And he climbed up on the roof of the car. He's so small that he doesn't dent the roof when he stands on it. And he pointed into the crowd of rioters in the dark. And he said, "You are children of God. Act like it." And they stopped fighting and went home. Now, a couple of nights later, they started fighting again. Didn't have a lasting effect. But it stopped them on the spot with that truth that everyone is a child of God. And when we believe that, our self-esteem problems go away. You know, AA has no membership cards. It is a fellowship, not a membership. You can't send dues to New York and belong. You belong by showing up. And everyone is welcome. The only requirement is the desire to stop drinking. not the ability. Show up drunk? Hey, come on in. We're for drunks. AA has no provision anywhere for voting someone out. There's no way to vote someone out of AA because we're all valuable. Even the most annoying drunk is still valuable as a child of God. We don't have a way to throw somebody out because we value everyone because we're children of God. We practice the principle of anonymity. And when somebody really screws up in a spectacular way, we just look at them and goes, oh boy, there, but for the grace of God, go I. We accept life on life's terms. We don't struggle to force people, places, or things to be different than they are. See, I always thought my resentments were caused by other people, by bad people doing bad things. And my first sponsor, Phil, corrected me. My resentments are caused by my expectations. See, I had resentments against my parents because I was a battered child and I have lifelong pain from the injuries that they caused. So I resented them. But I would still visit them twice a year, partly to keep them life-size, because in my nightmares they were huge because I was a little kid. And when you're little, they're big. And they're actually little old people. So I visited them to keep them life-size. And I would come away hurt and angry. And the reason was I had this covert or hidden hope that they would finally be nice to me, and they never were. So I'd come home mad. And Phil said to me after one of my trips to North Carolina, he said, John, you have to kill your parents. I said, well, I've thought of it, but I don't want to do the time. And he said, no, not literally. He said, what you have to do is you have to kill every expectation you have that they will be nice to you. He said, here's the deal. You travel 1,000 miles to their home, holding your beggar's bowl in your hand, saying, put something in my bowl, and they don't. And you come away hurt and angry. So the first thing you got to do is take your bowl someplace else where it can be filled. And then you have to lower your expectations to the point at which they will be met. Even if that level is nothing, nothing, nothing at all. He says, you keep expecting them to love you. He says, their behavior has been perfectly consistent over the years. They don't like you. He says, once you lower your expectation to the level at which they will be met, they won't hurt you anymore. Your expectations are pre-planned resentments. It's not their behavior that's making you unhappy. It's your expectation that they should change. It's your own expectations that are making you unhappy. Well, it took me a year to force my expectations all the way down to nothing, zero, nothing at all. Once I did, they didn't hurt me anymore. Turns out the last thing my mom ever said to me before she died was, John, you can go to hell. I said, I know. I wasn't expecting anything better. One day my dad called to say my mom had died. The first thought flashed through my mind was, good career move. I went down to the Southern Pines, North Carolina Police Department to thank them for their years of faithful service. They had her obituary pinned to the wall next to threat level orange to some guy named Muhammad. It's like, she's really dead. Oh, yeah, she really is. My mom, I won't give her entire life history, but my mom is the only alcoholic I have ever met where the police department took out a restraining order against her. Now, that is special. You know? Go mom. We surrender to the care of our higher power. We don't bargain with God to let us be social drinkers. We don't make excuses for ourselves, and we don't blame others. We just commit ourselves to God's care. We learn to trust God and trust the program of recovery for a positive outcome. Page 417 in the big book, if you've got a third edition, it's page 449. It says, acceptance is the key to all my problems today. Acceptance is not approval. It's acceptance that whatever is real is, in fact, real. Acceptance is detachment from strong opinions and a personal stake in outcomes. I used to live in northern New Hampshire. Northern tier of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont is populated by Yankees. Yankees seem to be born with the ability of acceptance. They don't get all wrapped up in things. They just accept what happens. If you do something blazingly stupid, they just say, That's different. If you're about to clean your hot car engine by pouring gasoline on it, they'll say, some people wouldn't pour gasoline on a hot engine. Very, very tolerant and accepting. Years ago, I was pastor of a little bitty Methodist church in the North Country, New Hampshire, and we had a little tiny roof that needed to be fixed. Most carpenters didn't want the job because it was small and high up, so you'd have to do a lot of scaffolding for a little bitty job. So nobody wanted the job. And there were two women, this is 1980, two women who had opened a carpenter shop that were rumored to be lesbian because the shop was called Out of the Woodworks and they had a rainbow. And so I told them if they took the job, they could hang their banner, a rainbow banner, from the steeple while they worked on it. The church was on a state highway. So they took the job. I went in the post office one day and there's two old timers there. And one said, I see you got them lesbian carpenters up on your roof. I said, I up. Second one said, they do nice work. I said, yeah. Up. First one said, wouldn't get me up there. I said, no. That was the whole conversation. See, acceptance. Acceptance is the key to all our problems today. It's not approval. I don't approve of having a daily migraine headache. But having no choice helps you make up your mind. I accept them. Because if you struggle against them, they get worse. Did you ever try to not have a headache? Did you ever try to not have diarrhea? Hold it. It doesn't work. Find a toilet and let go and let go. Acceptance is a key to all our problems today. We learn to trust God, do our responsibility, trust God for the outcome. My favorite promise out of that list on page 83, 84 in the big books, the whole list of promises of recovery. My favorite one is we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. I was working at Hazelden one day at Silkworth Men's Unit, and we had a guy who just hated it there. He thought the patients were a bunch of losers, the staff was a bunch of wimps, and part of his history is he had served honorably and well as a United States Army Ranger. I know almost nothing about war and fighting, but I thought, he's out, he was leaving. He's on the 4 o'clock car, he's out of there, he was so disgusted with us. But I can't hurt him, I'm not going to pour him a drink. I sometimes play Lieutenant Columbo, remember him from the Mysteries? I just have one more question. So I said, can I talk to you a minute? I said, yeah. I said, I understand part of your history is that you used to be a U.S. Army Ranger. He goes, wrong. Once a Ranger, always a Ranger. I am a Ranger. I said, oh, excuse me. I said, no, I've never been in the military. He said, and it shows. I go, yeah. What can I tell you? I said, but one of the things I heard about the Rangers is they never, ever leave a fellow Ranger behind on the field of battle, not even a dead one. He said, that's right. We carry out our dead. I said, doesn't that slow you down? He said, no. I said, well, I can see how that would give you a sense of confidence that you would never be abandoned by your fellow Rangers, not even in death. I said, that's right. We are one solid brotherhood forever. Even if we leave the service, we are one solid brotherhood. I said, oh, that's good. I said, now I understand you really don't like it here on Silkworth. Oh, no, these guys are pathetic. I'm surprised they're not dead already. They aren't even working. And you guys, I don't see how you can teach anything. Our instructors earned our respect. They had done everything they asked us to do, and we really looked up to them. You guys, too loose to teach anybody anything. I said, so you're really out of here. Said, oh, yeah, I'm on the 4 o'clock car. I can't wait to see this place in the rearview mirror. He said, okay, well, I just have one thought that maybe you hadn't considered. You might want to think about it on the way to the airport. So what's that? And I pulled my chair up so my knees are against his knees. This guy is huge. He's got arms like hams. I stuck my finger in his face. I said, you volunteered to be here. We did not draft you. The Silkworth peer group are your brothers. If you are willing to leave one Silkworth brother behind and die of this disease, You're not a real ranger anymore! He's gonna punch me. He turned purple, veins on his neck stood out. He jumped up so fast the chair flipped over backwards. He stalked out and slammed the door. Well, he didn't hit you. He stayed. By Friday, the guys are making their bed so a quarter would bounce off the bed. They're calling him Captain. Gentlemen, this is life and death, so take it seriously. I'm not going to make the guy into a Quaker. His higher power is the United States Army Rangers, and he's a believer. By the end of the week, they were believers too. Big Book says we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. I know nothing about being a ranger, but he knows everything. So let's go. We are meant to be, all of us, once we're sober, we're meant to be of service to others. There is no evidence that an 11.5-step program really works. I've had a spiritual awakening. I'm out of here. Good luck to you guys. Hope you make it. God has given us the gift of recovery, but we're given it for a purpose. See, my sobriety is not my achievement. If it was my achievement, it would belong to me. And I could be proud of it. But it's not my achievement. It's a gift that God gave to me through this fellowship. I didn't achieve it. It was given to me by men and women who cared enough about me to preserve and pass on these steps, these traditions, these concepts of service, this fellowship. And if I don't care enough about the next alcoholic to pass it on, I will probably lose it. Our leaders, traditions say, are but trusted servants. They do not govern. And I discovered service is the key, not just to recovery, it's the key to life. 1972, I had a starter marriage to Kathy. I was drunk, and I thought marriage entitled me to food and sex. So I come home at 6 o'clock. Hi, I'm home. What's for dinner? Want to have sex? Something about that.
Yeah, really.
After 2 years, she left me. I was crushed. I thought I was a prize package. I got a job. I'm capable of eating and sex. What else is there? She found something else to do with her life. I remarried eventually. I'm newly sober, and I learned how to be married at the car dealer. The car dealer sold Chevys and Volvos. I had a friend with a new Chevy. I had a new Volvo, and he was really angry because his exhaust system fell out, and they wouldn't do anything for him. And here was the logic: it's a new model year. Chevy doesn't make replacement parts till the car's been out for 6 months, so there are no replacement parts. So we can't replace your exhaust. We could weld it, but Chevy won't pay us to weld it because we're supposed to replace the parts, not weld it. There are no parts. They can't replace the parts. And they won't pay us to weld it because we're supposed to replace the parts, but there aren't any. So they wouldn't do anything. His point of view is, it's a new car, it's under warranty, fix it. And they wouldn't. So they finally duct tape it together, and he leaves really angry. I'm staying out of the fight because there's no win for me. So I'm getting an oil change. And they said, oh, by the way, we replaced both side mirrors under warranty. I said, why? They said, well, those little brown dots mean the backing is flaking off, so we gave you 2 new mirrors. I said, wow, this is so different. You're totally screwing him. I get 2 new mirrors. They said, well, yeah, it's not just that it's a different manufacturer, but Volvo is really strict with us. I said, what do you mean strict? They said, well, their standard is not that we fix the car. Their standard is we have to fix the car in such a way that it confirms in the customer's mind that they made the right choice to buy a Volvo. I thought, I bet that would work at home. I had never thought of marriage as a service commitment. But the way I come home should confirm in her mind that she made the right choice to marry me. So I come home, hello, how are you? How was your day? I love you. Is there anything I can do to be of service to you? Huh, it works. Now, I'm 66. My wife is 77. She's from Daytona Beach, Florida. We live in Minnesota. She doesn't like the cold. Okay, so this week she's in Florida, so she doesn't mind it so much. But a lot of times she's here. Part of being a 77-year-old woman in Minnesota is your skin hurts. So when she takes a shower, I spread a Hawaiian beach towel on the bed. I have Hawaiian plumeria scented lotion, and I lotion her all over every time she takes a shower. It's not a prelude to sex. It's to help her not have her skin hurt. Turns out sex isn't bad either. It's a service commitment. Yeah. It's a service commitment. Okay? And I arranged her travel. You know? She wants a window seat. There weren't any available. But somebody else moved up to first class, so I moved her to first class, not to a window seat and standby for first class. I monitor her seat maps as she's traveling to get her the best seat. It's a service commitment. I'm not in Florida. I'm still working. She's in Florida. I don't go, huh, you get to go to Florida. I'm stuck here in fucking Minnesota. No. It's a service commitment, right? And what do you know? Marriage is good. We just had our 40-year anniversary weekend. We both went to Key West, January 24th, which is our honeymoon, our anniversary weekend. But, you know, it works. It works for every area of life. The tradition says our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. You ever try to govern teenagers? Good luck with that. But if you see it as a service commitment to raise them to be responsible adults, it works out. You know? It works in all areas of life. No matter how short. I was in a hallway one day at Hazelden, and a guy I didn't know from another unit's coming down the hall. He says, John, I want to understand God. I want to understand God in the hallway. I said, forget it. Understanding's overrated. He said, what do you mean? I said, do you like women? He said, yes. I said, do you understand them? He said, no. I said, there you are. You don't have to understand to have a relationship. He said, good. He went off. We remain in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we continue to work the steps in our lives, so we'll be using the tools God has chosen for us. We pray, which is just talking to God. Talk any way you want. And meditate, which is listening, so we may know and do God's will. Once, many years ago, I was in therapy for the child abuse, and the therapist was trying to get me to find my anger. And I had no feelings at that point, none. He was trying to get me to identify my anger. I didn't want to find my anger, because if I found it, I would have to assault him, and he seemed like a nice guy. I was driving on the freeway one day, and I found all my anger at once. It was like the roof of the car peeled back, and a garbage truck dumped the full load in the car. Just anger. The whole car is filled with anger. Not a good time. I'm supposed to drive well. So I just yelled. I tried to break the steering wheel with my hands. I just yelled the word angry at God. Full volume. Angry, 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 as loud as I could yell at God until my throat was sore. I finally stopped yelling the word angry at God. The answer came from God in the back of my head. It was like my voice, but it was God's thought, because I didn't like it. That's a good sign. And the voice said, John, you can get well, or you can get even. Pick one. It's like, no, I want them both. I want to get well and I want to get even. I want to kill them and chop them up in little bits and stuff up and down in little bits and then get well. There's no other answer. I knew it was true. I could only have one, and I wanted both. But there was no other answer. 2 days later, I finally picked getting well. That's still prayer. Yelling at God is still a prayer. God can handle it. Talk to God any way you want to. You don't have to go to prayer classes. Just be honest. It's not like God can't handle it. No. The point of prayer meditation is to seek and know God's will. Step 11 has a remarkable idea about prayer, never been brought up in church. It says praying only for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it out. Most prayer, including most church prayer, is more magical than faithful. Here's the difference between magic and faith. And I'm a Methodist minister. I've led a lot of prayers in church. I was a parish pastor 17 years. In church, pastor says, what are the prayers of the people? Somebody raises their hand and says, Mrs. Smith has cancer. I say, oh, that's terrible. Let's all pray that God would do something nice for Mrs. Smith. A says, no, go the other way around. Pray that God will tell us what we should do. Pray for knowledge of God's will for our lives. Okay. Pastor, Mrs. Smith has cancer. The AA prayer would be, God, tell us what we should do for Mrs. Smith. Maybe she's too sick to cook. Could use some dinners. Maybe she needs a ride to the hospital. Maybe she can't afford those expensive cancer pills and we should take up a collection for her. Forget the foreign missions a minute. Let's help her buy her pills. What does God want us to do about Mrs. Smith and her cancer? Pray for knowledge of God's will for our lives and the power to carry it out. It's completely different. We remember the past and we cultivate gratitude in our hearts for the gifts of recovery. I started on drugs and alcohol to treat the pain of abuse. I continued to, even when I'm not being abused, to blot out, as the big book says, to blot out the consciousness of my intolerable situation as best I could. And then therapy, God's grace, love, and friendship made the intolerable memories intolerable. The grace of God, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous have made recovery from alcoholism and addiction possible, reliable, and ultimately a source of joy and happiness. Coming up towards when I ought to stop, but I got to tell you one more story about intuitively knowing how to handle things with tobaccoless. 2008, my wife and I went to Bhutan. It's a small Himalayan kingdom way up in the mountains. It's very traditional culture. And we were in a small town 165 miles beyond the last electric line. We're at a festival for the return of the black-necked cranes from Nepal. School children are dancing around little paper-mache crane heads. And I knew, don't wear your hat in a Buddhist temple. I knew, don't wear your hat in the temple courtyard. But I didn't know if they string colored rope in a square, it counts as a temple courtyard. And we got there late because there was a collision of 2 potato trucks, and we had to walk the last half mile. I sat down in the 3rd row, utterly clueless to the fact nobody else was wearing a hat. And this woman 3 rows in front of me, who looked American, turned around and hissed at me, "Take your hat off!" And I took my hat off. And she went on to denounce me for anything that's ever been done wrong by white American men, starting with Columbus, and the destruction of the Plains Indians, and the import of slaves from Africa, and the Transcontinental Railroad, and the import of Chinese to work the gold fields, and the unjust seizure of land from Mexico to create Arizona and New Mexico, and the Spanish-American War, and the First World War, and the deployment of mustard gas, and the Great Depression, and the Dust Bowl, and the Second World War, and the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the 1950s, and the soullessness of that era, and the Vietnam era, and Agent Orange, and global warming, and she's going on and on. She's going, "You Americans." And I'm thinking, maybe she's Canadian. They look like us. And just hatred, you know. And it went on. I timed it. It was 6 minutes, and that doesn't sound too long. When someone really hates you, 6 minutes is a long time. And I'm thinking, maybe I'm supposed to, learn something spiritual or grow from this encounter. And she finally finished, and I said, well, I do regret wearing my hat inappropriately, but I did remove it when challenged. And I just want you to know that I'm really here for a deeper and more meaningful spiritual purpose than you may suspect. And she said, what possible spiritual usefulness could you have? I said, I am the living embodiment of all your resentments. And no matter where you go in the world, you cannot escape me. She got up and left. So we will intuitively know how to handle situations which use tobaccoless. So if we will read chapters 5 and 6 in the Big Book, how it works and into action, and do what the steps say, we will never drink or use again. Now, I have a theory, and this is a segue to my little book. I wrote a little book while I was still at Hazelden called Being Sober and Becoming Happy. And there's a theory to this book. Initially, we take the 12 steps to get bad things to stop. Stop drinking, stop drugging, stop ending up in a police station, stop waking up with strangers, all kinds of bad things to stop. But if we keep taking the steps in sobriety, we end up happy. That's the theory of the book. They're also available on Amazon. So if you get the book and you like the book and you say, gee, where do I get another book? You get more from Amazon. I'm going to tell you the last story in the book from 5 years ago. Our wedding anniversary is January 24th. It's the coldest day of the year. And Priscilla's from Florida. So we tend to go away over our anniversary. 5 years ago, we were at the Oriental Hotel in Bangkok. And it's one of the nice city hotels. And the main street of Bangkok is a river. And the hotel has a nice restaurant, Marble Terrace. And so we had an anniversary dinner, 35-year anniversary. And I wrote her a love letter. And if you write any kind of letter with an open heart, without an expectation, no outline, no plan, just start writing. It can take a turn that you didn't expect. And they're small pages, but on the 6th page, it took a turn. And I wrote, ultimately, this is a gratitude letter. Because God and AA and you have taught me how to love. As you know, I was raised by wolves, so I know everything about hatred and very little about love. But God and AA started teaching me how to love. AA taught me about loyalty, about hanging in there with the other guy, about steadfastness. And you have been consistently loving over these 35 years. 35 years of dinner with you is a lot like water on stone. And over the years, I've become smooth and round. And God and AA and you have given me the capacity, the ability to love that I never had. And so now, at 35 years of marriage, I love you like never before because at long last, I finally can. And for that, I'm grateful. See, I thought love is what you didn't do. You don't do anything wrong. You go to work, you bring your check home, you don't screw around. It's what you don't do. I didn't know it's what you do because I had no lessons. My joke about the family is our motto is our love may be insincere, but our hatred is always genuine. So I would have gone along thinking, just don't fuck up. Just don't screw up. Don't do violence. Don't commit crimes. Go to work. Bring your check home. Don't do anything wrong. And that's it. That's the top of the scale. I didn't know there's all these positives. The Narcotic Anonymous basic text says if we made a list at the beginning of everything we ever wanted, we would shortchange ourselves because what we get from this program is so much more. So come to AA, come to NA to get your misery to stop. But then keep taking the steps throughout your life and you'll get the bonus, which is so much more. And that's what my little book's about, being sober and becoming happy. So with that, I'll stop talking at you and take some questions. Anything that my talk brought up, try to answer some questions for you.
Had so many at the beginning.
Had so many at the beginning. Okay. Well,
Good questions.
so-
I remember them. Sorry.
okay. Well, anybody got a question?
Are you speaking anywhere else?
Yeah, actually, I'm doing a series in Minneapolis. It's a long drive, based on the book. I've done the first two. There are 9 chapters in the book, and this tonight's talk is based on the first chapter. I've done the first 2 chapters in Minneapolis at the Basilica of St. Mary's, and next week I'm doing chapters 3 and 4 at the Basilica on Tuesday and Thursday night. The schedule is on the web at theretreat.org or simpler, mary.org. M-A-R-Y, mary.org, Basilica of St. Mary's.
Okay.
So, speaking of Los Angeles Saturday night,
I'll be there.
gathering.
Even better to be
Speaking of Elk River, the 18th.
Oh, I'm from Elk River,
Elk River.
and I'm gonna be back there.
Well, let's see. I think it's the 18th. Let me look. Oops, let me get this here. Elk River, Alano.
The Al-Anon Club.
Yeah, Alano is at AA Clubhouse. It's Thursday evening, February 18th at 7, Elk River Alano Club.
I'll be there.
All right, so it'll be similar to this talk, so you get instant replay.
Okay.
The Elk River Al-Anon, February 18th.
Where can we find information in regards to that 1 month inpatient treatment that you were talking about?
At the retreat, on the web, theretreat, T-H-E, retreat.org. Yeah. Yes.
Were you in recovery before you were a pastor?
No, I was drunk. The last 4 years, never got since I was sober. I wasn't that bad when I was drunk. But I helped a lot of people get into treatment because I thought I wasn't an alcoholic because the people I got into treatment were mostly street people. I thought they were alcoholics. I just drank a lot. The last 4 years in Everett, Massachusetts, I was a sober pastor. 13 years a drunk pastor, 4 years a sober pastor.
Whereas you're just affiliate.
No, Methodist. But,
I don't know if I missed this, but is your wife in recovery or no?
she's an Al-Anon. She has her black belt in Al-Anon. If you're not familiar with that, how it works is you go running at her, she steps aside, and you throw yourself on the ground.
That's
Well, thank you for coming. I'll be in the back. I've got books, and I'm also happy to sign them for you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.